So another legacy of Margaret Thatcher, water is full of crap and private investors want the people to pay for it. So the CEO of Thames Water, Chris Weston, has called for a 40% increase in bills to pay for the investment needed to fix the emergency with our polluted waters. The boss of Thames Water has told the BBC customer bills need to rise by 40% by 2030 to pay for the improvements. That is the price customers have to pay for the investment in our infrastructure that's needed, he said. The firm is in a race to find extra cash after its investors said they would not give the struggling water giant more money unless bills rise. The regulator, whose approval is needed for any price rises, has so far pushed back on substantial bill increases. Sources close to Ofwat say it plans to stick to its guns and won't raise bills to address shareholder problems. So to explain everything, investors have pulled up from providing £500 million worth of investment in Thames Water. Now, apparently that's part of a larger package of £3.25 billion, which is apparently needed to fix the infrastructure. Now, for them, of course, they now believe that investing in water is obviously bad for them. They're not getting the return they need. And the reason for this requirement of investment is because currently there are a record amount of sewage that's pumped into our waters. It's disgusting. And the infrastructure desperately needs to be upgraded. Things such as pipes need to be fixed. But of course, private companies don't want to do that. They want to make a profit. And what annoys me so much is the issue is framed in such a way that, this is a specific issue that can be resolved by better management. Wrong. Privatization is a disaster. It starves essential services of investment. But of course, private companies, they're not going to invest if they don't see a substantial return. And now they're throwing their toys at the pram and withholding money. But water, as with all the other monopolistic services, are not supposed to be particularly profitable. It requires high levels of investment. It's a public service. Whatever money that's needed needs to be put into it. But of course, when it's under private control, they're only going to be, I would say, putting in the bare minimum of investment because they want a return. Now, because public services really aren't actually a good investment for profit, in order to make money, then you have to de-invest. And that is part of the strategy. They've squeezed money out the service. And because it doesn't naturally make a lot of money, the issues we're seeing today, these issues, that is by design. Poor infrastructure and shit in our water has been a choice. Otherwise, investors wouldn't get their money's worth. And even in times of high profitability, there is no mechanism to make sure that money is invested. Instead, naturally, where does that money go? We know where it goes. It funnels to the top, to the shareholders. Now, since Thatcher privatised it 35 years ago, £56 billion has been paid out in dividends. So privatisation is a sham. It doesn't work. And public ownership is the only way out of this mess. It's the emergency measure, which is to take it under state control. We cannot go on like this. Now, of course, Labour have said they're not going to put it into public control. And I'm sorry, Keir Starmer should have been utterly decimated, utterly pulled apart in the media for this. He's going to be our Prime Minister and he's refused to support the one thing, the only thing that can solve this issue. And it's ideological. The left are often called ideological and purists from mostly the Labour right figures. But centrists are just as ideological as everybody else. Sticking to the privatisation model is purely ideological. No amount of regulation or management will fix this. Now, investors have said, we will put in the money needed only if bills can rise. And of course, they've asked for a 40% increase. And once again, we have another example of privatising the gains and socialising the losses. Ordinary people are going to have to foot the bill to a tune of 40% increase in bills. Now, of course, Chris Weston, incredibly arrogant, massive wage he's on as a CEO, is calling for an increase in bills. But this paragraph in The Guardian also shows the complete arrogance from investors too. On Thursday, the investors, which include the Canadian Public Pension Fund, OMERS, and UK's University Superannuation Scheme, Abu Dhabi's Sovereign Wealth Fund, and the Beijing-controlled China Investment Corporation, pulled the plug on a commitment to provide £500 million of equity last week, part of a total of £3.25 billion in extra cash the company is seeking, saying Ofwat's intransigence made Thames uninvestable. Why the hell should people pay for the negligence of these companies that have allowed our infrastructure to rot, that have allowed our water to be polluted with shit whilst making billions in profit? It is criminal. It's criminal. Thames and the parent company also have a debt worth of £18 billion, which of course is expected that people of London must pay for that with the increase in bills. And now I want to tackle the myth of this being too expensive to renationalise. We can't afford it. Even if the initial cost to put public services, especially Thames, in public control is eye-wateringly high, the long term is better, not just for people, but for the economy as well. Privatised services are often subsidised by the taxpayer, and the railways are an incredible example of this. How much taxpayer money do we put into the railways because they're being de-invested by these private companies, but they also draw huge profits? So if we're putting money into the service anyway, then why don't we get to reap the benefits? Now, in terms of water, think about this for a second. This clearly has a multiplier effect. I think this is clearly going to put a strain on the NHS because a polluted water is going to make people sick. It's going to give people health complications. There may be long-term health issues with people if they're consuming disgusting sewage-ridden water. And of course, there may be other multiplier issues that we haven't thought about, which the government may have to step in and pay for. And this is just like 2008, right? Gordon Brown did the right thing by putting the banks into public ownership. Banks could not be trusted in the private sector. But then what happened? We sold it off again. We bailed them out. And then we let the private companies carry on as usual. These same people that have not been held to account, not a single person that caused the 2008 crash where people lost their livelihoods, people lost their homes, not a single person, not a single banker was put in jail. No, we let them control the banking sector again and we gave them bankers' bonuses. We rewarded them for destroying millions of people's lives. And that is what privatization does. If we're going to spend money by bailing out the banks, then it should be under our control. Having control of these assets is one, far better for the services because we will put in the investment that's needed. And there's also a democratic accountability here. There's no democratic accountability to private companies. Some of them are in Beijing, right? How can we hold these people to account? But if a government is in sole control of public services, we can vote them out if they're doing a bad job. So if this was completely nationalised under a Conservative government, right, and there was raw sewage going into our waters, we can say, well, we're going to vote you out now because you're not doing a good enough job. We have control. The public has control of who controls our services. But when it's privatised, there is no democratic accountability. And also, it's better for the economy as well. This is how screwed up our public debate is, because we have politicians on both sides, especially the Labour Party, which is supposed to be the more progressive one, which only a few years ago had public ownership in their manifesto, is pretending to be the adult in the room, pretending to be pragmatic by saying, we can't afford to do this, we don't have time now. I'm sorry, but this is ludicrous. And the media, yes, okay, they are talking about public ownership in a couple of Guardian articles, but there should be a massive wave of scrutiny to every single politician that doesn't wake up and open their eyes that this failed Thatcherite privatisation model has never worked. It's ripping people off and it's costing us money. That it's not a pragmatic position to say, we just need to get a grip on it and we're just going to change a bit of regulation. No, we should be absolutely saying, if you don't support public ownership, you don't deserve to be in office. You don't deserve our vote. But unfortunately, the media doesn't do a good enough job by holding these people to account, by telling the truth, and it leaves us with politicians like Keir Starmer, who can just say, we don't really need to do much, we'll just tinker around the edges, and he can get away with it. And it's just not good enough. It is not good enough. People say we can't afford to renationalise our public services. We can't afford to have it under private control. All of our public services must be in public hands immediately, and with Thames Water specifically, we should nationalise without compensation. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and drop a comment. It's good for the algorithm and I'm interested in what you have to say. If you're not already subscribed, please do and hit the notification bell. You can also support this channel by becoming a member for 99p per month. And if you're feeling a little more generous, then you can support us on Patreon for £3 or £5 per month. This channel for a while has been uploading every single day, and it's quite a lot of work that is still voluntary and scheduled around my paid work. But I have so much ambition, expect in the future to see more variety in content, such as interviews and Vox Pops. But I want this to be a fully fledged media organisation where not only is this my full-time job, but to have multiple people working for Turn Left. I like to see a live show in the future, more content that delves into culture, history, and much more. But that can only be done if there's money. So please, if you can, support us in any way that's in your capacity, And thank you to existing members, subscribers, and patrons. See you next time.